Hello, I'm very happy being in Portugal today to meet the Secretary of State for Energy, Artur Trindade. Artur, we know each other since many years and we have even worked together, but today you are at the highest level in your country for energy policy. You are the Secretary of State. I know that Portugal has been very successful with renewable and has been a European pioneer with this energy. Could you tell us what are the successes you are very proud of in this area, renewables?
Thank you very much, Jean-Michel. It's a pleasure to see you again here in Lisbon. I enjoyed working to you in the past in very interesting projects, especially the ones concerning the Florence School of Regulation, an important institution in our energy policy in the European Union. Regarding your question, one of our most relevant aspects of our success story is the fact that we are one of the countries with more renewable energy in our energy mix, in our electricity mix, and no one knows about it when they are consuming energy from the network or when they're using the network. So to speak technically, there has been no change in what people feel at home when they use the electricity system because they have more renewables. We have more than, in average, 55% of renewables in our power grid. There are hours of the year where we have had 97% of renewables, and there are weeks where we have 80%. And in some cases, these percentages are related to wind energy, and mainly wind energy. Some other times we have hydro, wind, solar, and so forth. This has shown that it is perfectly possible at a technical level for the network operators to accommodate this type of energy without the population, the domestic consumers, the services, the industry, to feel altered in the way they function, in the way they consume energy. So there is no technical problem associated with the integration of high level of renewables into the power grid. This has been a success story for the generators in itself, for the grid operators, for the regulators, and everyone that interferes in this system. That is one aspect that is not stressed enough when we talk about energy, because we talk a lot about costs, competition, which is very important. But the fact that we have mastered the technical aspects of that integration and no one has noticed it, it reveals that there is no problems in dealing with that, or in other words, the problems that appeared along the way were dealt with engineering, with technological solution, with the implementation of rules, and they were solved, and now they are solved. So this is a success story, especially on that regard, and it is important for us to share this success story with other countries, to take away sometimes illegitimate fears related with technological change. And it is also important for us to share these examples with other countries which are at a lower level of the industrial phase in the energy system and in electricity. For example, countries that we have very good relations in Africa and in Latin America or in Asia for historical reasons, and where we are partners for investment and economic cooperation. It's very interesting to show to these countries that they can go faster towards renewables without having to worry about the lights going on, or there is short circuits, or there is technical faults, or the quality of the energy they have for the industrial process is affected. And this success story has a value which is very difficult to measure, but it is one of the aspects I would like to mention when we mention the success, which is not stressed often enough.
Artur, so the success is complete inside the country for the inhabitants, the economy, the society, But now we have another aspect being the European internal market. Does the European internal market permit to Portugal also to benefit from its success at the European level?
Actually, there's the part where our initial plan to decarbonize the electricity system has suffered more changes from the beginning. And the fact that we do not have an internal energy market in a stage of completion that is in line with the expectations we had when we started this renewable project and this renewable bet as a country and as a society, the fact that the internal market has not progressed as much as we expected has left us a little bit behind and has caused some trouble with the social acceptance of this success. I can explain you why. We, Portugal and Spain, have similar models and have had similar ideas on going forward in renewables. So Spain has also a high level of penetration of renewables. So our systems are not complementary. So we are not seated next to a country that has no renewables. Spain has also renewables. This means that we invest a lot in capacity for renewables and also on some gas-fired power plants, which, as you know, are necessary to complement the system when we have a lot of renewables. So we have designed our system and our incentives to have a lot of renewables and a lot of capacity to tackle the existence of renewables and also to create competition in the market. But we thought that we had an efficient internal energy market at a level that would allow us, for example, to share some of our excess capacity that we have in certain moments in time with other countries in Europe. The fact that we have no interconnections between the Iberian Peninsula and the other countries in Europe, so we are almost on an island, Portugal and Spain are like seated together on an island isolated from Europe. This means that our project to invest a lot in renewables has created a lot of periods in time when the amount of energy generated from renewables it's superior to the amount of energy consumed at that moment in time. This will mean that the opportunity cost or the market residual value of that energy approaches zero. So the returns you have as a society or as someone that has supported renewables at those moments are very low. And this does not make sense because when you are valuing renewable energy or electricity at a very low opportunity cost, someone in Europe, for example in Poland, is burning coal. And why? Because we do not have enough capacity to allow for example, in this case, the Polish consumers or the Polish energy system to benefit from our energy at the cost that will be much lower than the cost of burning coal. And we will benefit our infrastructure that is already geared and our consumers that are already paying for that infrastructure by sharing that energy with, in this example, with the Polish energy consumer and alleviating costs here. So if we had interconnections, the costs of energy in Poland will be lower and the cost of energy in Portugal will be lower and the optimization of the system will be better. And in top of that, as a continent, as a union, you will use less carbon and less CO2. So on top of this efficiency gain and competitiveness gain, you'll have a gain on environmental sustainability. But for that, you had to have a way of transfer the energy, which, as you know, travels electricity almost at the speed of light, you would have the opportunity to optimize here your system and to reduce the level of dependency and of use of fossil fuels. If the market regarding interconnections and also regarding market rules, but in this case it's physical interconnections, if you had gone at the rhythm, for example, that was foresaw on the 2002 Council in Barcelona, where the member states decided that a 10% matter, a 10% goal for interconnections should be achieved earlier than the end of the decade, and we were in 2002. If you had 10% of interconnections between France and Spain, this problem, as of today, in 2010, will be much less of a problem, and a lot of energy could have been shared, and our park for generation in renewables would have been much more optimized, alleviating the burden that we have on consumers, both in Portugal and in Spain. So the fact that the internal energy market was delayed, the fact that the physical interconnections, especially between Spain and France, were very much delayed, and even the projects that we have today are have a very small ambition for what is necessary. The fact that that did not happen as planned, it harmed our internal plans in Portugal and Spain to move forward and to complete the goals that were with ambition for 2020. So, in one side, you had a lot of ambition in the European Commission to 2020 on Europe as a whole. You have a lot of ambition going for renewables in Portugal, but somehow along the way, one important piece of the puzzle that will be the interconnections between areas was missing, and that caused the overall results to be suboptimal. And it's something a lesson that we have to learn when we will establish more goals, for example, for 2030. We cannot allow this to happen again. We cannot allow to have any type of goals regarding the energy mix without making sure that we have the proper tools on the ground for that overall goal to be optimizing, because the world is a very competitive place today, and we cannot afford the luxury of having suboptimal policy decisions.
Do you mean that we will need at the European level a big infrastructure package if we were to have new ambitious goals for renewables and internal market?
Yes, we actually were, me and the Ministry of the Environment and Energy, which is the ministry I belong now, we were defending in this informal council that we have just last week, we were defending 4 targets. And not 3, not 1. Although we have a flexible position between the 1 and the 3 targets, because conceptually they can be entangled, but we want another target, which is a target for interconnections. Without that target, we cannot move forward for the first target, and with the 4th target, we are very happy to be ambitious. So our level of ambition regarding objectives for a low-carbon transition is very high. But we consider that those ambitions are simply unrealistic or are clearly suboptimal if you don't implement a well-functioning market. And we are responsible for energy policy and for our citizens, and we cannot go to our citizens saying that we were irresponsible, establish targets, but in the mean, there are something that is very important for all the targets, which is an integrated market, that we don't have any particular agenda for that to be completed. The agenda has to be binding, and has to be and is a condition for the other targets to exist and to be binding. And that's answering your question. Yes, we want that.
Spain and Portugal already have a common market, the Iberian market. Is there any particular good lessons that this common market can teach to the wider one, the European internal market?
Well, the first lesson is that competition and the fact that you integrate a market, you create competitive pressure on the agents, and that will benefit consumers and will make our system more efficient as a whole. And we have felt that on the Iberian market. So at the wholesale level, which is where the market has started, and even in retail, but initially at wholesale level, we see efficient price decreases and low margins among the operators. That is very important, and that happens even when there are not a lot of flows, physical flows between the two countries, because sometimes you have hours of the day where the interconnection is not used in physical terms, but the prices are equal. Why? Because the fact that you have the interconnection there changes the behavior of the players, because they know that if they act in a different manner, trying to explore the consumer surplus, as economists say, or trying to explore an advantage, the other will go over and will tackle that price differential and will take the demand or the market away from him. So the fact that in some hours of the day you have less usage of these interconnections doesn't change the fact that they are there benefiting the market. And the fact that you know that the regulators and the government have established rules for the market to be as much integrated as possible also is a very important message for anti-competitive behaviors, which sometimes the agents try, because they try to explore the opportunities. But the fact that you are politically committed and you have the tools to act is also helpful in having efficient and good behaviors in terms of competition. So these are the main good lessons. Also, we have some question marks for the future that derive from our experience, which is that some instruments that we have, even in our own common market in Portugal and in Spain, are national and different, like in all the rest of Europe. That doesn't change that the fact that the market is integrated. For example, the capacity mechanisms or the capacity payments that we have in Portugal and Spain, they are different. The subsidies to renewables, or the way you pay renewables, they are different. What we are finding out to our own expense is that the fact that these are different and unharmonized may also create some unwanted effects in investment. So it's also a good lesson for Europe and for the general market making of the European internal energy market, is that you should carefully reflect on the level of harmonization you want to have in these particular aspects of energy policy, which are typically viewed as national and aspects given to the subsidiarity of the member states. So I agree that sometimes there are political options that have to be validated by electors, and they mean choices of the society, but some of them can interfere with the market. And so when it interferes with the market, it is no longer under the realm of the subsidiarity principle, it's under the realm of the community, of the union, and has to be viewed on that manner. It's no longer simply a national issue. So establishing, for example, capacity mechanisms to allow a lot of capacity onto your state, you are a member state, can interfere with what is happening on the other member state. For example, it can create a certain frame for less investment in interconnections and for less use of demand and supply in an integrated manner between two areas. And this has to be considered as we go forward, less part of national policy and more part of a European policy. I believe that during a transitional state, we might have just guidelines or intervals for the national state to intervene. But as we move forward, we'll have to continue to integrate more at that level. Another lesson that we have that is regarding with this experience we have been having with the MIBEL between Portugal and Spain is an important reflection between the benefits and disadvantages of our ambition or the extreme weight we have given to the spot or day-ahead markets or daily markets. Because there is an important reflection that I've been having here in my country, also with Spain, but I think is being done at European level. I've shared my views with the Commission as well, which is we have some suboptimal movements again in our market design policy in the European Union, which is we have a lot of exchange being done in a manner that is affected by daily price setting. But when we talk with the consumers, namely with the industry, but also with domestic consumers, they will tell you that they would like that a big chunk of their electricity they purchase will have a stable price for 2 years or more. And also when you talk with generators, they also tell you that, okay, they don't mind competition or they accept competition because they have to, but they would prefer if they can compete, but the outcome is stable for a couple of months or years or more. They ask, in those cases, they ask even for more. So the fact that you have consumers wanting to buy energy on longer term periods, and the fact that you have generators wanted to sell energy on a longer period framework, and the fact that you have, for example, in Iberia, most of the trading being done on a daily basis, makes you think that the mismatch between what consumers want and what sellers want has a lot of space for improvement. And what we are also reaching the conclusion here in our analysis is that we would like to improve this, to give more rationality to the investments and to the decisions that are made, including consumption decisions and generating decisions. But for that, it is important to have a view on where the overall market design of the Union goes. And why? Because if you change things here in Portugal and in Spain or in Iberia to something that you consider to be very good, for example, if you move towards a system that exists in Brazil, and if you don't do it in an aligned form with the other countries that surround you and the ones that you want to trade with, it is not a very good approach, because on the end of the day you might have to change it again and again. And as you know, in energy, investors and players do not like a lot of changes, and they also have bad effects on long term if you keep changing the rules of the market. So you should change the rules of the markets with some distance, so to give credibility and visibility to the market agents, and not constantly for the same reason. So the fact that we have diagnosed some things that we think that will need improvement, and we are looking very closely to what's happening in Brazil, I think has to be put on the table, not at the Iberian level, but at the European Union level. And the lessons we decided to take have to be somehow put it on a framework that is applicable to everyone. And it is an effort that we have to do in Europe. On the other hand, I think that building infrastructure will help. Because sometimes they tell me that is a chicken and the egg issue. That if you cannot build infrastructure because you have these different realities, and this will cause a problem because the existing of infrastructure will create new flows, and this will unbalance some situations in some countries. Well, my view is actually the other way around. The fact that you create infrastructure, you create a natural pressure for policy harmonization and policy optimization. So you have to go actively as a common policy objective to do infrastructure, even knowing that the model that you need to fully take advantage of that infrastructure has to be changed in terms of rules. But if you have to wait for the harmonization of rules and then do the infrastructure, you'll be deadlocked, as you are in some cases in Europe regarding energy.
Thank you, Artur. Thank you for this wonderful lesson in energy policy. I wish you good luck in your position of Secretary of State. I also remember you that you have friends at the Florence School, that you may visit us anytime, and even someday you may come back to teach with us. Thank you, Artur.
Thank you very much, Jean-Michel. Glad to see you here.